Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. Today we're going to take a look at my Game Week 3 watch list, running through some of the players that have caught my eye to help you plan your transfers for the week ahead. Without further ado, let's take a look at those 5 top picks. The first player I wanted to take a look at today has started off the season like a house on fire. Bryan Mbeumo has benefited greatly from Ivan Toney being banned for the foreseeable future, scoring 3 goals in his opening 2 game weeks. Now, it is important to note that 2 of these goals have been penalties, and whilst it's amazing that Mbeumo is now on penalties without Toney in the side, I don't think it's sustainable to expect that he'll be getting a penalty every single week. So 2 of the 3 goals he scored so far are penalties. We might need to dampen our expectations ever so slightly. The XG per 90 at the moment, with the penalties included, is 1.57, which is a ridiculously high number. That's higher than Haaland last season. That's higher than anyone last season. So I think it's fair to say that that will come down a little bit when they're not getting penalties every single week. But Brentford, more than most teams, do actually get quite a number of penalties. So we will get still the benefit of a few penalties from Bryan Mbeumo throughout the season. Now, it's important to note that even without those penalties added into the per 90 stats, he's still got an underlying XG of 0.84 per 90. That's without the penalty, so that's still incredibly high. The team at the moment looks like it's built around creating chances for Bryan Mbeumo and Yoane Wissa. So at 6.6 million, I think he is still incredibly good value. And as you can see from the fixtures below, 3 really nice looking home games in the next 4 against Palace, Bournemouth and Everton. All really good. There is the Newcastle game in Game Week 5 to contest with, but to be honest, they look like they can score against anyone at the moment, so I wouldn't be too scared of that. And then in Game Week 7, they go up away against Forest as well. So it's a really good stretch of fixtures. He looks like the pick in the 6.5 million bracket at the moment. Okay, he has gone up very, very slightly. So if you're on the likes of Mitoma or Eze, you might need to make sure you've got that 0.1 in the bank to move up to him. But at the moment, with the fixtures looking the way they do, he'll be highly popular. He's being bought by a lot of people at the moment. And despite the fact that penalties are a big factor, even without them, he looks really good value for money. So after Mbeumo, I also want to mention Yoane Wissa, who has also started off the season really, really well. He is the one, more than Mbeumo, who is filling in for Toney up front in that centre forward role. At a 6.1 million, that is insane value for a really attacking side, scoring lots of goals, having a centre forward that's starting week in, week out. That's great value. Even without the penalties, he's getting great underlying data. 1.01 XG per 90 at the moment. Again, really, really positive. I would expect that to come down quite a bit in the following weeks, even with good fixtures ahead, as I mentioned. But even if it does, at 6.1 million, all you're looking for is a striker that's starting regularly and scoring the odd goal. And if you're on the likes of Watkins at 8 million at the moment, downgrading and moving that 1.9 million elsewhere could be a really interesting route, especially considering the fixtures ahead for Wissa. He isn't getting 90 minutes every single match, it's important to note, but he is coming off at around 75 to 80 minutes. I think he's averaging 80 minutes in the matches that Toney hasn't been available for so far. So I'm pretty confident that he continues to start, and because he's already scored 2 goals in his opening 2 Premier League fixtures, I don't think his starting position is under threat anytime soon. So I'd be pretty confident in his minutes. I'd be confident in him getting those starts regularly in that centre forward role. And like I mentioned, with Brentford's fixtures coming up, I think it's important to try and get to one of the attacking options in that Brentford strike force, either Wissa or Mbeumo, both great options. But the benefit of Wissa is there are a lot of midfielders at the moment that we really like the look of. So it might be slightly more difficult to get to Mbeumo. I'm finding it quite a struggle in my team for this game week. Whereas there is a striker spot open that I'd be more tempted to manoeuvre with. I've got Ollie Watkins in my side. He hasn't looked bad, but he's not on penalties anymore. So that could tempt me to downgrade that spot to the likes of Yoane Wissa and maybe save that money to move elsewhere. So that is an option. If you can't quite get to Mbeumo easily, Wissa could be an even cheaper and even more complementary spot in your side that you can squeeze in to your team a lot more easily. Speaking of popular midfielders at the moment, Phil Foden has started off the season really positively. And I think for most of us, the key thing stopping us from picking Phil Foden in our sides is that regular starting role that we're not sure he'll actually maintain under Pep Guardiola. However, opening 2 game weeks, 90 minutes in both matches so far, and with Man City's resources a little bit stretched at the moment in terms of their player base, there's not a lot of options there for Phil Foden to be rotated out with. So at the moment, it looks like Phil Foden is fairly likely to start week in, week out for City. And when you look at the fixtures ahead, there are some fantastic fixtures you'd expect plenty of goals in. So Sheffield United away, straight up in game week 3 is a great hopping on point. And then you've got Fulham at home, West Ham away, not a bad fixture at all either. And then Forest at home, followed by Wolves away in the next 5. So that's a great run of fixtures. Having Haaland is one thing, but most people will have and captain Haaland for the foreseeable future now after game week 2's out the way. So having that second City player to complement Haaland up front and get that benefit from having a City attacker could be really important. At 9.7% ownership, he's not exactly mass owned at the moment. He's a fairly good differential, and I think he will be owned by a lot more people in the coming game weeks now that we're seeing that he is starting regularly. He's also taking up that more central role with KDB out as well. So he benefited greatly from that in the most recent match. It was an absolute masterclass from Phil Foden against Newcastle over the weekend, and it looks like he's going to be starting for the foreseeable future at 7.5 million. If he starts regularly, is fantastic value. And as you can see, the underlying data is already coming along fairly nicely. It's about what we expect from Phil Foden week in, week out. 0.3 XG per 90 and 0.32 XA per 90 is about standard for a player of his caliber. And you've seen that season in, season out. So I'd expect that to continue for him. Only 1 assist so far, but he did get maximum bonus points against Newcastle. And like I said, he did run the show. So I'd expect more attacking returns to flow in the next 5 game weeks for Phil Foden. And with the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Rashford not performing the way that many of us were expecting them to, having Phil Foden at 7.5 million, downgrading that spot to him might not be such a bad idea, especially considering he is currently outperforming them. Hey guys, pausing the video really quickly here just to say thank you so much for all your support so far in growing the channel in the first few weeks. If you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. It really helps grow the channel and reach other FPL enthusiasts out there. Anyway, back to the video for now, and thank you so much again for your support. Another midfielder I want to mention today is Diogo Jota. Looked really good against Bournemouth, getting a goal and an assist. At 8 million for a midfielder who's actually playing out of position in that forward line for Liverpool could be absolute gold dust if we know that he's going to start regularly. Now, so far, he started both matches, which is really promising, although it is important to note that he does get brought off after the 60-minute mark fairly regularly. 65 minutes in the first game week and then 75 in the most recent game week against Bournemouth isn't exactly ideal, but he still has plenty of time to get those attacking returns, and in a very, very attacking side as well. 0.49 XG per 90 is still really promising, but it is important to caveat that with it will be a little bit lower because he's not actually getting the full 90 minutes. So that is something to weigh up if you're looking at bringing in Diogo Jota. There are other really good strikers and forward players waiting in the wings for Liverpool who could come in the second that he has a poor game as well, but Diogo Jota is usually favoured in that starting 11, mainly because of his pressing game and the fact that he works really hard off the ball. That's something that the likes of Darwin doesn't really have about his game at the moment. So I'd expect, especially with the fixtures coming up, the pressing game to be of high importance to Liverpool, especially against Newcastle away from home in game week 3. So I'd definitely expect him to start in the next couple of game weeks. And because he's in decent form as well, I think that starting spot is his for the foreseeable future. Longer term, the fixtures do turn pretty positive. From game week 5 onwards, going up against Wolves away and then West Ham at home isn't a bad fixture run at all. So if you're looking at moving off of the likes of Bruno Fernandes around about now, or maybe at the end of game week 3, Diogo Jota could be a really good option and a differential to target with fantastic upside. The final player I'm mentioning today might come as a bit of a surprise to a lot of you, but Nicholas Jackson, in my mind anyway, has looked pretty encouraging in the first 2 game weeks, although he hasn't gotten any goals or assists to back up that claim. His underlying data is still really strong though, 0.66 XG per 90. For a centre forward at Chelsea, that's still really decent data, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he's capable of with some really nice looking fixtures in the next 3 or 4 game weeks. Luton at home represents a really good chance for Chelsea to get up and running properly, to bring that side together and settle down into a system that really suits their style of play. Against West Ham, I actually think they were a little bit unlucky. Their XG data does suggest that they deserved a little bit more out of the game than they actually got, and I think against Liverpool they look really, really impressive. As a part of that, Nicholas Jackson spearheaded the attack really well on both occasions, quite unlucky not to come away with any attacking returns so far, and although a lot of people will look at him as an option and think, not for me because he's not gotten anything on the board just yet, I think in FPL it's one of those things where you've got to try and eye up next week's attacking returns and the next trend in FPL, and everything I've seen from him so far suggests to me that he's got goals in his locker and they're going to hopefully start flowing soon. At 7 million, he represents pretty decent value for money in a good attacking side and could be a really good route into the Chelsea attack at the moment, with not too many options elsewhere really impressing me outside of the likes of Ben Chilwell. Because he hasn't gotten any attacking returns so far, I also expect his ownership to remain fairly low ahead of Luton at home, and Luton have looked really leaky at the back so far, so I think it's a really decent opportunity to pick up Nicholas Jackson before he starts scoring the goals. It is a bit of a gamble, but fingers crossed it will pay off in the next few game weeks. The final thing to mention is Chelsea are still in the market for new signings, and a lot of people are concerned that would be a centre forward to compete with Nicholas Jackson for that starting spot. I've had a look at some of the quotes and it seems to me like they're looking for more of a number 10 role than a centre forward role and not another number 9 at the moment, so I think his starting spot is fairly safe for the time being, although with Chelsea it is worth keeping an eye on that because they're always in the market for new players and you never know who they're going to be linked with this time tomorrow, so keep an eye on it. It might be a player that I'd look at bringing in ahead of game week 3 nearer the end of the week once we've got a little bit more information, but for the time being he's very high on my watch list. So those are the 5 players that I've got my eye on ahead of game week 3. Please let me know what you thought of them in the comments below, and also let me know if there are any other players that you've got your eye on ahead of game week 3 in the comments as well. If you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that would be incredibly helpful if you enjoyed the video today. But in the meantime, I wish you all the best ahead of game week 3 and I'll see you for my team selection later on in the week.